What's up, everyone? Welcome to the next episode of Bassin Biology. I'm your host, as always, Thad Moody. Today, there's no robe. One, because it is extremely hot here in Mississippi right now in my garage. And two, everything is in chaos because I'm currently packing to head to Toledo Bend for the Bassmaster Kayak Series event down there. I'm leaving in 2 days for that, so wish me luck on that. But today, we have a very fun topic. And a question I get a lot is, how do I break down a new lake I've never been to in order to prep for fishing or prep for a tournament, especially for pre-fishing? So that's what we're going to cover today, is what I look for in a new lake before I ever leave my house. So first off, let's start off with my target species. 9 out of 10 times, I'm targeting largemouth bass in these lakes. So I know I'm going to be targeting largemouth bass. So what I have to do is look for the main forage fish and main prey species of that lake. Whether it's a herring lake or a shad lake or a brim lake. And I'll pick what I believe is going to be the main forage fish for the species I'm targeting. Then I'll have a backup forage fish. So if I'm fishing a predominantly shad lake, I will also carry baits that mimic brim. The different types of brim species. And a great way to find this out is to go to that lake's, whatever state it's in, DNR, like Toledo Bend, it's 2 states away from me. So whatever state's DNR that lake's in or manages it, I go look for that and see what all's going on with that lake. It tells the species, the native species. And another great point for that lake is look and see on that website they have a depth chart. So once I figure out the predator prey species, I'm going to try to match the hatch. Matching the hatch just means finding lure combinations that's going to primarily match the forage fish I'm trying to imitate, whether it be shad, herring, bluegill, pumpkin, seed fish, whatever it is, trying to match that hatch. Crawfish is a big one. So matching the hatch with the forage species that these fish are primarily targeting is automatically give you a leg up. It'll help reduce the amount of tackle you have to take. It will help narrow down what you're taking, what you're trying, what you're throwing to begin with. Secondly, I look at the main types of structure in this lake, whether it's docks, is it a grass lake, is there tons of rock on the bank, is there sunken timber, is there standing timber. I look for all of those things. That way I can kind of narrow down where to look for fish. If I go in there and see there's sunken brush piles, and yes, there's going to be brush piles of stuff that's not on these DNR websites or not on Google Earth or something like that. But a lot of them will have fish indicators at different depths. Or if you go on all kind of Facebook forums, they talk about stuff like this too. So if you can go on those Facebook pages, those websites, and look for all of this before you ever go, the structures you're going to be targeting. If I'm targeting, deep brush piles, that's 40 feet depth at this time of the year, and that's where the fish are going to be at, well, I'm not going to be throwing a bunch of different baits can't get down there to it. If I'm primarily targeting shallow docks, or if I'm in 12 foot of water, the hydrilla or whatever comes up to say the 8-foot mark, that gives 4 to 5 feet of water column right there. I'm gonna throw different baits. I probably won't throw a deep diving crankbait, stuff like that, through that stuff, because it's just going to get eaten up by the grass. So knowing what type of structure you plan on fishing as a primary source is a fantastic way to narrow it down too. Always have 1 or 2 backups though. Fish are different wherever you go, so always have 1 or 2 backups as a plan for the structure you're going to target. Next, it helps to know and look at the depth chart in these lakes. Whether you're fishing a really shallow lake like Ross Barnett here in Mississippi, you're fishing a super, 200 plus foot deep lake like Lanier where you're targeting pelagic spotted bass swimming around out there in the open, or, if you're out on, up north on Erie or something targeting smallmouth in 20 plus foot of water, know how deep this lake you're going to, because if you're going to a super, super shallow lake, the average depth is 10 foot or less, you're not going to take, 5XD, 6XD, toss it out there, ripping it through on the ground like that. It's just going to bust that crankbait up. A shallower diving one, like an 8-footer, would be a much better choice at that point, especially if it's a heavy grass lake. So knowing the depth at which you're going to be fishing is another step toward helping narrow down and get more dialed in on these lakes. Water clarity. Are you fishing, muddy water like I do here in Mississippi? Or are you fishing super clear water like they have up north? Or, in Missouri and parts of Tennessee and parts of Alabama? If you're fishing muddy water, you can normally get away with a little bit heavier duty line. You don't have to use such fine, leaders. I can go fishing straight, 15-pound fluoro or 17-pound mono on my crankbaits, as opposed to tying on a 8-pound leader for stuff like that in murky water. Around here, I really don't even tie a leader on. I throw straight, 50-pound braid for a lot of my top water and my punching rigs. For even my wacky worms, I'm tying 15-pound straight braid on it, and it's very effective because the water clarity is horrible here. 2-3 foot of visibility is a good day here, but that's not going to work up north in some of these other lakes. So know your water clarity before you go to these places, and that will again help you narrow down your baits. If it's real murky water, black and blue flake, or solid black, or green pumpkin and black flake, is going to be a lot more effective. Or maybe chartreuse and silver than some of these other colors at different areas that's a clearer body of water. Because you're fishing 8 feet down with a murky water, low light penetration and all that, they're going to be hitting shadows and figures as opposed to actual color and cutout stuff in a lot of times. So knowing the water clarity and depth which you're fishing at, again, helps you narrow down those baits. Super clear water, I'm probably going to throw on a silent crankbait or a silent rattle trap, which is really weird to call it rattle trap, as opposed to the murky waters down here. I want the thing to make a whole lot of noise when it's going to just rattle, because it helps them narrow down and target those baits better. So water clarity is a big aspect of it all too. Baits and how to match all this. Your line choices, your reel choices, your rod choices. If I'm fishing heavy grass and punching mats a lot of time, I'm going to probably have a couple of heavy rods on there for frogging and punching and ripping stuff through that grass. Probably not going to take any mediums. Medium heavy is probably going to be the smaller ones, on minus a few finesse things on my spinning rod. As opposed to I'm fishing super clear water, kind of deeper water. It's going to be a lot of spinning rods, a lot of finesse, a lot of doing all that stuff. Shaking the minnow, wacky worm, Ned head. It's going to be a lot more of that in the clear water versus the murky water. So your line choices, the rod choices, whether you're throwing a bunch of chatterbaits and spinning baits or crankbaits, or if you're Texas rigging, if you're throwing finesse plastics, if you're throwing rattle traps, deep dive cranks, underspins, top waters, all that's going to come into play from your water clarity, your structure you're fishing, the clarity of the water. I think I said clarity of the water 2-3 times. Water temperature is another big thing. Weather conditions. If you're going, it's going to be bluebird skies, you're going to toss, if you're fishing top water, a darker bait versus a lighter bait. Whereas if it's overcast most of the time, I'm throwing a white walking bait on top water, like a head and spook or something like that, as opposed to a darker version of it, because you want to sit out the silhouette a little bit better. If it's overcast, that white silhouette's going to stand out better. If it's bluebird skies, that darker silhouette's going to sit out better on top water. All this is just ways to narrow down and break down a new lake on what you need to take. Because I would love to take the entirety of my tackle wall, and I've got, I don't know how many boxes full of all kind of different stuff here everywhere I go, but that's not feasible. I only have so much room in this Titan right here. I don't have so much room in my truck to carry stuff with. So I have to narrow it down for these tournaments, for these new lakes. I've never been to Toledo Bend. I've watched a ton of videos on it. I've looked on the forums. I've looked on the pages. I've looked, YouTube videos, watched a ton of stuff on it. And that's another great tool for narrowing down this type of lake you're going to. If you can find videos that they were fishing last year, around this time the water's about the same, whether the water drawdown was drought or not. That all that comes into play that can help you narrow stuff down. Because again, if I'm throwing, going a shad lake, be throwing these crankbaits here, whereas, get off there, a little more clear water, and brim's a primary forage. If they're up there spawning, I'm gonna throw this one right here, imitate the green pumpkin, as opposed to these that imitate, threadfin or a gizzard shad, something like that. Then you have, the other thing. You have your crawfish baits, and these imitate a crawfish. This real clear water, very little noise coming out, versus, and actually this is a complete silent one. That's the hooks you're hearing out of. But crawfish baits at different depths of the water column, matching the hatch for stuff like that. If I don't have any clue what's going on, I may throw a flat side. It's got a little bit of green in it. Could be a brim. It's got the white spots. Could be a shad. Then there's always, tried and true chartreuse baits. A little bit of red in them, eyes in them. Still have that black spot on them that could possibly mimic a shad. The green color could possibly mimic a brim. So you're just trying to match all. I have a hook in my finger. Hold on. Could match all the, different aspects for these bodies of water you're going to. And I still hooked my finger. Quite honestly, that hurt. You could easily mess up with weather conditions and water temperature. If it's 50 degrees, I'm not throwing popping frogs and buzz baits and plopper baits, stuff like that. I'm probably not even throwing a spook walking across there. That's cold water. I'm going to throw subsurface, glide baits, spinner baits, chatter baits, underspins, maybe some shaking a minnow at it, stuff like that. The water temperature's 90 degrees, I'm throwing top water a lot, especially if it's cloudy or overcast. I'll throw top water all day and just catch fish all day long on top water. So watch out for your water temperature too, because that can make a huge difference. Drought periods can also have very great effects on the lake. I fished Big Bass 250 a couple of years ago, and you're talking about a sudden change. During pre-fishing, it was 75 in the afternoon every day, beautiful, sunny, a lot of water in the lake. Well, we go into a tournament. I put my kayak in the water. It's 38 degrees. They had dropped the lake 8 inches overnight. A lot of the structure that I was fishing the top of is now out of the water. Some of the shallower spots I was fishing is completely shallow and gone. It was cold, it was wet, it was rainy. I had to change my stuff up on the fly. Didn't change it up quite good enough. Didn't do very well at that tournament because I wasn't prepared, because I did all my research, looked at all the stuff ahead of time, and the weather changed drastically like it wasn't supposed to. And now I always carry backup to my backup lures just in case. I carry one box of my just in case stuff. And then the drought comes into play. 3 years ago, the St. Jude Classic here in Mississippi, I was fishing, grass flats and some fallen timber in this big cove and just catching them left and right, left and right, left and right. I went back the next year, to fish my history. Same time of year, exact same weekend. The difference is we've been in a drought. So that lake was so drawn down and so low, I would have had to have walked a quarter of a mile across the ground to get to the deeper spots I was fishing the year before. So thank goodness I could pre-fish and do some different stuff, but it just wasn't there for me. So while fishing history and looking at the history of these people that fish and how this lake has been in the past, you can look at all the stuff I mentioned beforehand. But if you don't check that water level and make sure that it's in line with when all this research is being done it's all for naught. So a lot comes into play. And finally, if you can request like the creel data or the spray records where they're spraying grass, the grass is dead or gone or poisoned, stuff like that, the creel records, what fishermen are actually catching, if they report all that stuff, if you can request that and get all that, that's a huge, huge thing. Because what's the point of going, I fished Guntersville this past year for Native Power Hour, and they had sprayed this area where at the same time last year we fished mats everywhere, beautiful punching, beautiful frogging all day long, punch all day long, frog all day long, catch fish all day long doing that, sunny or not. We went back there this year, expecting there to be big mats there, Guntersville, high driller, eelgrass, ready for all that, ready for the frog bite. I didn't catch a single frogfish. The mats were not there yet. They had been sprayed and cut back and sprayed and, manually removed in a lot of these places. So we threw that game plan right out the window, went and found some new water, paid off for my fishing partner, decently paid off for me. I had a top 50 finish there, not my best work, but it was a good time. So fishing history is not always great, but if you can find the spray records, just because these beautiful mats have been there for the last 10 years doesn't mean the federal DNR are spraying for these noxious federal weeds. And yes, hydrilla and eelgrass are considered federally noxious weeds and invasive species, so they are sprayed for. And some people agree with it, some people don't. I'm not into that part. I'm just a simple biologist who reports data. So, putting all these things together, you find your forward fish, the structure you're going to fish, the water clarity, how you're going to present your bait, your presentation, your weather, the water conditions, finding stuff on the maps, creel data, spray data, fishing history, drought conditions, all that comes huge into play when you're prepping for these lakes. And the more you research, the more time you do prepping here at home, the better time you're going to have on the water in case something doesn't play out the way you originally thought it was. So you can have a backup to a backup to a backup. I'll tell you right now, I'm going down and fish this Bassmaster event on Toledo Bend against some of the best in the world. Greg Blanchard's going to be there. Obie Williams, King of the Delta himself. Francis Tran. Probably Ron Butler Jr. A bunch of these other big name guys. And yeah, I fish against them. I don't consider myself anywhere near their level. I compete with them. But if you want to go and prepare with a chance to beat these guys who do put in this time, who do put in this work, better get you a notebook, start taking notes, some research on stuff. That way you go down there and say, you know what? I'm just going to drag a Carolina rig. I'm going to pop some frogs. I'm going to hit this grass mat. The fish are going to be in this giant cove of grass. This grass has been there for years and years and years. You go down there in Texas parts and rec, Louisiana, and spray that grass and it's gone. Better have a backup. That's all I'm going to say about that. So guys, as always, tight lines, take a kid fishing, be a good conservationist, and most importantly, be kind to each other. Be nice. The world sucks. Make it a little better. Go fishing. Go take a new person fishing. Take a kid who's never been fishing before. Go out there and get your peace of mind. All right? See y'all next time. Good luck.